Good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of the Addicts Advocate. I'm your host, Dusty Dean, and it is my pleasure to introduce Nicole. How are you, Nicole?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Thanks for spending the Sunday afternoon with me and talking about all things recovery related. I know that you're also now in the field. You are
Yeah.
a peer recovery specialist, and I want to definitely hear more about that. But I know that you as well are in recovery.
Yeah.
And as I like to always do with my guests, is I want to give them opportunity to talk about their story. What have they learned in this process of recognizing, having an addiction, getting help for it, the struggles afterwards, the victories. Lay it all out because I think it's impactful, it's powerful for the listening community to recognize that if they're struggling, and there are symptoms, right, that we sometimes they sneak up on us, right? This disease has a way to really kind of get a hold of us before we've really recognized that it's gotten out of hand. And that's one of the cunning, baffling, powerful ways in which it operates. I have a friend of mine right now who does not have a problem, but recognized that he goes, you know what? I'm not feeling too good. I'm not drinking. I don't drink that much. He goes, but I'll maybe have a glass, maybe two, on an evening some night, and the next day I'll feel it. And he goes, what's that all about? And I'm like, well, that's kind of like the start.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, you should, and he basically said, hey, I'm doing dry. I'm going dry. He goes, because I don't like this feeling. I'm like, well, that's good that you've picked up on that. Because the next phase becomes you have to drink just to not feel that way anymore.
Yeah.
Right. But nonetheless, enough with that. Nicole, the floor is yours. I'd love to hear your story.
Um. All right. So, I lived like a whole normal life. I was married, had 3 children at the time, and 2013, I got my gallbladder taken out, and it seemed like right after that happened, like my body just was like shutting down. Like I had zero energy. I couldn't digest any of my food. And I was just sluggish. Like, I worked a full time job and took care of the kids after work and all that, and had tons of energy until that. And that happened for like a good year and a half. Like, I was going from doctor to doctor, nobody could figure out what was going on. And for some reason, like, um, I think I had a toothache or something, and I had still had the prescription from like a year and a half prior. When I got the gallbladder out, I had a prescription of Vicodin. So I took a piece of that, I broke it in half, and took that, and all of a sudden I felt better. I wasn't tired no more. I got energy. I felt healthy again. I was able to live my life again normally. So I just continued to take them. And when they ran out, I found excuses to get more. Um, and that went on for like a good 2 years. And then in 2017, I lost my health insurance, so then I couldn't get my pills no more. And I was introduced to heroin at the time. Um, it was real heroin still for the first like 4 or 5 months, and then it turned into Fetty. And I was able to function though. Like I still worked a full time job, highly functioning addict at that time for a good 2 years. Um, And then like it was just getting too much. Like I was spending $300 a day just on that, and to be able to keep up with my house, the kids, and all that, I couldn't do it anymore. So somebody gave me the idea of to do powder. So I started doing that to cut down, which I did, but I picked up another habit, so really it didn't make no sense at all. And then that tore a hole like in the middle of my nose. So I have like a huge hole that ripped right through. So I stopped that. And then I started smoking crack. That's when everything went to crap. Like, I quit my job, everything. Um, I ended up homeless on the streets. I lost custody of my one son. He was 9 at the time. The other 2 children, they were old enough. They went to live with their dad, but they were 17 and 8, or no, 17 and 15 at that time. So I lost custody of my 9-year-old, and he went to go live with my aunt, and then lost a house. Ended up on the streets of Camden, living on the streets for a couple years. Been in and out of jail. Um, huge criminal record now. But where I'm at now is I have 1 year clean. I'll be finished drug court successfully this July. And I just gained custody. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped a part. While I was out there on the streets, I got pregnant and carried her full term. She was born a healthy baby. Of course, DCP&B took her right away. So I was back out on the streets again. But it didn't sit right with me. Like, I didn't want strangers raising my kid. So I ended up going to rehab 3 different times until it finally stuck. And the rehab that I went to was probably one of the best that I've ever been to.
What was that?
Ewing, New Jersey.
Okay.
It's called For My Baby and Me. And so they'll take you and your child in. If you don't have custody of your child, they help you get your child back. They make sure you get back and forth to program. They make sure you get back and forth to your visits. They feed you. Like, you don't need anything when you go there at all. They'll make sure you got clothing. Your child has clothing. They give you housing afterwards. They get you caught up on, like, if you have fines or anything like that, they help you out with that. They transported me back and forth to drug court. And now I work with the program.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. Sounds like a beautiful organization.
Yeah, it really is.
Thank God there's establishments like that have those services available. I'm on the opposite side of the country over here in the San Francisco Bay. And I know that we have, at least locally, we have some things for battered women and things like that. And I'm sure we have kind of a similar situation, but that's beautiful. I'm going to make sure I give a shout out to them, For My Baby and Me. And they're in Ewing, New Jersey, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Anyway, so you've been a year, and you've got your baby back.
Yeah, I just got full custody back of her August 23rd, 2024.
Wonderful.
And then January 11th, I think it was. I forget. It was like 2 Mondays ago. They just closed out the case finally.
Good for you. Congratulations. Mm-hmm. How's the relationship with the other children?
Good. It's good. I stayed in contact with them throughout my addiction still. But now, like, I got my license back and all that. I got a vehicle, so I'm able to go see them.
Wonderful. One of the things that's been really eating at my mind as a father is that, how do I talk to my kids about it? They've seen me in active addiction, so they know what it looks like. And I think for a lot of kids, it can scare it right out of them. They never want to get to that point. But the problem then becomes that this thing is still kind of genetically linked with our lives. How do they deal with someone should they have a child who's still got the same predisposition and falls into the trap? Because we have a loss of the experience. If I experience it, but my kid doesn't experience it, but then their kid experiences it, and I'm not around to help them, how do we break that cycle? What's the education? How do you? So that's been really eating at me, because I think that that's the only way we're going to end it, right? Is a lot of these things can be laced with generational trauma or mental health issues that are genetic. And so we obviously want our kids to have better lives than what we had, right? We hope that they learn from our mistakes. What does that look like?
I
If you have
mean,
any thoughts.
for me, like my kids, I'm sure they've seen more than I know that they've seen because I wasn't fully there. But they didn't see what I lived out on the streets. You know, they were secluded from that. So for me, I know some people wouldn't agree with me, but for me, I think bringing them out there and showing them what addiction really looks like taking them out on them streets and showing them, like, look, this is where what happened to me. This is where I lived on this curb over here or that bando over there. Um, Look, this is how many times I went to jail. Like, you know, it's my past is still haunting me. Like, I just got my license back July of last year, and I just went to get car insurance on my own. And because I had some driving while licenses suspended, my car insurance is like 500 and something dollars just for liability. And that's because of what I did in my past. So, I mean, like, the best way is to, for me, I would think, is to just show
Yeah,
them because where I was living, it's bad. The streets are bad. You can see it everywhere. It's not hidden. It's all out in the open. I don't know if you're familiar with Kensington, with what that looks like,
no,
but it's similar to Camden. Um, it's just all open market everywhere. Um, People passed out all over the place, standing up, sleeping. It's a shame. It's bad.
yeah, yeah. We have the Oakland and San Francisco, right? We have obviously pockets of both of those cities that have tremendous issues with homelessness, right? And ultimately, if there's an allowance for drug addiction to be open, and when we'll provide you with the needles, it doesn't really help the situation, right? And that's the thing. I mean, there's it a lot of people say, right, this isn't about quitting your substance use, right? This is about so much more because you're always going to fall back to it if you don't get to the root of what's going on, you
Right.
know. Um,
A lot of it's mental health that's untreated.
right, right. And or it's a vicious cycle, right? The things that you're using, while they may have been fun for a minute, have driven your chemistry so out of whack that you can't live without it, right?
Mhm.
And that's when you're trapped, right? You're done because you can't handle the withdrawals. You're afraid of what the withdrawals feel like, and
Yeah.
so you're just like, forget it. I'll push it off to another day.
You know, a lot of
And
it is, I'm sorry,
go ahead.
a lot of it is too that they haven't updated the withdrawal protocol, like the detoxing protocol, since heroin changed. It's not heroin no more. I can't
Okay.
even tell you the last time I actually tested and had heroin in my system was probably 2017 or 18. After that, I never had a drop of heroin in my system, not even a drop. So the medication that they have when you go to detox or if you go to MAT, um, that's for heroin. That's not for fentanyl. It's not for
Mm,
xylazine or metadomine or however you pronounce that. It's not for
okay.
any of that. And that's what's withholding some people from getting treatment because of that fear.
Got it. They're not able to detox in the yeah, they're not providing the right detox methods. Got
Right.
it. Huh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've never ventured on that side of my addiction. Never took me there. It was always the alcohol way. So, um, really accessible, right? And I could do it out in the open, and nobody paid any
Yeah.
mind.
I just lost
Yeah.
my brother just passed away
Oh, I'm
July
sorry.
from alcohol.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. How old was he?
39.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do you have any other siblings?
No.
No, he was it. I'm sorry. I am
Mm,
sorry.
thank you.
You leave behind a family?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll say a prayer for him and his family. Oh, yeah, no, that's the thing. It's to just this is my attempt is just to make it more publicly out there. We got to get this stuff in people's faces, helping them understand. Let's not Let's not be afraid of what it looks like, because you got to get what it looks like out of your head and get to it, because there are so many people suffering that
Mm-hmm.
are never going to get out of it if they can't get the help. And then from there, they're afraid of getting the help because they have lives to live. I'm like, I can't take my time. I function this way. I can't take 30 days out of my life, let alone you're telling me an aftercare program or a hospitalization program. And I can't do that. I can give you 7 days, maybe give you a weekend of detox, but I can't give you. And that's where we just are such as an impatient society, right? That we don't give ourselves the chance to really break down the walls, love ourselves again, right? Be accepting of who we are and all of our flaws and imperfections, and recognize that this is what we've given. This is what we're dealing with, right? This is something that we're gonna have to manage the rest of our lives, and just as much as a diabetic would have to manage, and I try to keep it, I try to remove this whole, this is my character and I'm a bad person and I'm this and I'm that. It's like, hey, you got sucked into something that you had no chance of getting out of, and it took you
Yep.
this path. And so now that
Not a
you
big,
recognize what it is, now you have the choice, right? You have the choice on which way you want to go with this.
not a
And
bad person. You made bad choices.
right, right. Um, as far as your sobriety, has there been any like revelations, anything that has just been enlightening to you in this process?
For me, like, I honestly, and I wasn't really even out there that long, but in my mind, I was like, oh, I'm too far gone now. I got way too many charges. Um, you know, I'm homeless. Like, I'm in my 40s. Like, what am I going to do now to repair my life? But
Right.
the support system I built with the program that I went to, if it wasn't for them, honestly, I don't know that I would have stuck with it. And then on top of losing my brother in between all this, he passed, he passed right before I got my daughter back. Like he missed getting to see me get my
Mm.
daughter back. And the crazy thing of it all is 3 days before he went into the hospital, um, I decided that I was going to use that Monday visit and stop at my brother's. That was his first time seeing her, and she was a year and a half old. So he got to see her a week before, no, 3 days before he went into the hospital. And then he passed like 2.5 weeks later on. But the night that he passed away, at 5 p.m., I got a phone call that I was getting my first overnight visit with my daughter, which is so weird because it was a Friday night. And normally, DCP&P office, they're out of there by 4:30 at the latest. And they called me at 5 p.m. was like, we're going to allow you to pick her up for the weekend. Please meet us at the park tomorrow, 10 a.m. Which is like, I don't know. I just feel like it was like my brother up there, like, knowing that I needed that because I was very close with my brother. Like, I would come
Yeah.
every weekend and spend the weekend at my brother's.
Yeah. Yeah. It's sometimes life is so merciless, right? Just so merciless when we're trying to go through things and you just like, it just keeps getting thrown at you and you're like, I can't even tread water here. And what you said was, I think, very, very powerful, especially when you take your perspective, like you mentioned about, this is where I was at in my life. I was in my 40s. I was homeless. I'd had this record, and a lot of people, I can only imagine a lot of people would throw in the towel and would succumb to it and would basically, you know, because that's part of the problem with homelessness, right? Is that there is such a massive loss of connection with with the support system. Um,
Yeah. Honestly, like if I hadn't gotten pregnant and had another child because I knew my my son was with my aunt and I can see him whenever I wanted. So I knew he was fine and he wasn't
yeah,
taken by the state. He was with
right.
family. I signed over kinship.
Okay.
But having a child of mine with a complete stranger, that didn't resonate with me well. So that's honestly, I believe, what has kept me to where I am today, on top of the good support system that I have.
Boy or girl?
A girl.
A girl. How old now?
She will be 3 in May.
Awesome.
She's a handful.
Probably deservedly so, right? As we would all agree. I always
Mm-hmm.
said, Lord have mercy on me with mine because of what I did to my parents, right?
Mm-hmm.
um, hmm. Yeah, I'd mentioned this before in one of the other episodes, but I met a gentleman who wrote a book on homelessness, and the book is titled "When We Walk By," and he had actually spent some time the in the living with them. He basically was in San Francisco living with them, and one of the things that he had determined through like all of his studies was that it was a lack of connection. That was the dominating percentages to why people were on the street. Sure, there might be mental health issues. Sure, there might be addiction issues, right? But it was literally lack of connection. So he created this organization that was basically hunting people down that were family members to these people that he had found homeless and reconnecting them. And he's so far, I think he's in the hundreds now where he's been able to do this. So it's kind of an inspiring mission that he's got. I'm trying to get him on the show one of these days when he's not so busy, just because I'd like to hear more about his perspective because he's very enlightening.
And that makes a
And
lot of sense, what you're saying about that book and all that. I like to read
yeah,
that. But
yeah,
it's true, because you can go get clean, right? You can go to rehab, you can do detox, you can do the 28 days. But when you get out, where are you going?
right,
You're back on them streets again.
yeah,
You don't have no housing, you don't have nothing. Like you need something, you need somebody. Like you
yeah,
can't, it's almost impossible to do it by yourself. You have
yeah,
nowhere to go. You're not going to have the best of credit
yeah.
coming out of addiction. You can have a job all you want, but that credit's going to stop you. Like there's got to be something put in place for people after addiction.
Right. Yeah, it's not like you're walking into a rehab in 30 days and you're being changed into something else. I think what happens is that you're basically being broken down into a state of rawness, right? It's a little raw and scary when you're trying to stay sober and your first time back at home, and
Yeah,
it's a foreign feeling, especially you've been in it for some decades, right?
yeah. Well, I don't work in the area where I used to use. Like, so Trenton is the capital of New Jersey, and I was from Camden, which is the complete bottom, right next to Philadelphia. So
Okay.
I'm like 45 minutes to an hour away. And I've been in the area. It's not really a trigger, but you know, I,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be comfortable, I don't think, at first working and running into everybody that I ran the streets with. Eventually I want to work towards that, because I want to help the people. They're still people. They might be
Yeah.
addicts, but they're still human and they still need
Yeah.
help.
Absolutely. Do do you have any triggers still that we're unaware of that pop up from time to time?
I've had a couple of dreams that when I woke up,
Hmm.
I was scared. I wasn't sure if it was real or not.
Okay.
Like I would have dreams that I I used, and the following, it would be a Thursday, which is the day I report to drug court. And when I woke up, I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, did that happen? Like, am I going to fail this drug test? But, and a couple of times I've had almost like I would taste it, like almost like
Mm.
and I just, I already started to rebuild my life. And I just turned 44 years old. I just got my daughter back. I just got my license back. I'm almost done drug court now. I'm in transitional housing right now. Like, what do I look like going back out on them streets at my age and then giving my child up that I just fought so hard for? You
You
know,
have a
like,
lot of motivation, a lot of motivation.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the mission too, right? In recovery is what's motivating people, right? Because I mean, from a mental health perspective, right? When you look at alcohol being a depressant, and if you already are depressed, and just like you're putting yourself down a rabbit hole that you're like, well, what's motivating you to get up every day? And those are things that are important drivers. We need purpose in our life, right? And when we feel like we don't have it, it becomes an uncharted territory. I know I've heard of a couple instances where within my community that I deal with, where they'll go and they'll tough out like a weekend away with friends and family because maybe there's a wedding, destination wedding somewhere, and they know that people will be drinking and everything, and so they're just going to muscle it out, right? They go through and doing that and subject themselves to the exposure of it, but not drink, and then come home and basically relapse within a week
Yeah.
because there's so much triggers and so much sensory that the brain's just going, hey, the whole time, hey, that was good. Let's go. Let's get it back. And because it's so logged in the brain so hard that you just end up just one day you end up driving to the liquor store and you're like, boom, and it just starts and you're like, what happened? And I've seen that with two different community members that you're like, wow. So even just, being tough and strong and subjecting yourself, exposing yourself to that environment isn't very healthy. And the unfortunate thing is that you're not just going to maybe feel bad at that moment. You're going to maybe feel bad later and you're not going to know why. It's because this whole recall is just, and the physiological effects that this thing did to us. Like you said, you could taste it. You're like, where's that coming from? Right. That's,
Right.
I think it's the brain going, hey, it's your addiction going, hey, let's go have fun. Let's go. You remember
Yeah.
this, right?
Mhm.
It is truly remarkable.
And here I am every day. I do harm reduction too.
Okay.
So here
Okay.
I am every day playing with needles and crack pipes, like putting together the harm reduction kits and all that
Mm.
and handing it out and all that.
Yeah. So yeah, just the exposure to paraphernalia and such, right, is it can definitely be triggering. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I commend you for your efforts. I really think that obviously the community is an important part, is one of the most important parts in staying sober. And I think inevitably, if you're going to stay clean, right, you're always your life is touched and held on to that part of your life, forever. You can't walk away from this thinking you get it right, because that's what happens. Complacency happens, and you go on living your life and you say, look at me, I'm cured, I kicked this thing. This thing no longer has control of me. I have control over it. Let's go have a drink. And that's when it all starts over again. um,
You're never cured. You're always
you're
going to
net
be in recovery.
right.
And
Right.
there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah. Was your brother was local to you?
He lived in Gloucester City, so he was like about 35 minutes away from me.
Okay.
Like
Okay.
I always grew. I mean, like I said, I came up here to Trenton for the program, and I just never came back.
Got
That
it.
I came up here October 3rd, 2023,
Okay.
and I had weekend passes. So before I got my license back, I would hop on a train and I would spend the weekend down there. And then when I got my license back, I would drive there every weekend, spend the weekend with him, and I tried talking to him every weekend, trying to help him.
Yeah.
And I finally got him, we finally detoxed him 4 days before he ended up in a hospital.
Wow.
So he detoxed and he was doing really good, but his liver was just too far gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
I'm sorry. Is mom and dad around at all, or?
My mom, yeah,
Yeah.
I spent the day with her today. Um,
Okay.
and then I put her through some crap.
Yeah. Haven't we all? Yeah. I mean,
Mhm.
I know mine as well. I'm like, ugh. So, if if you've got someone moving forward, let's say one of your children does have an issue with it down on the road, how do you approach them?
Um, I would just talk to them like I would be talking to the people out on the streets. Like, you know, what's this look like for you in 5 years? You know, you even think you're going to be here another 5 years? Like, it depends. See, it all depends on where they're at with it to how you talk to them. Like, if
Right.
they're experimenting, that's when I would, you know, show them the harsh reality of where they're going to be at, you know, and
Yeah.
show them the statistics, how many people have overdosed and all that. And I mean, hopefully that never happens with my kids. Like, I believe that my kids are scared enough and have seen what I've gone through to even go that route. But I'm
Yeah.
not also naive enough to think that it won't ever touch them.
Right.
But I know how to handle it, the
Yeah.
best way I can. I'll never turn my back on them, and I don't believe in the tough love because you push them out your door, and you might just be pushing them to their coffin, you
Right.
know.
Right. Yeah, no, I appreciate that because yeah, it's a slippery slope, right? You have to obviously take care of yourself in this process, right? In order to be
Mm-hmm.
of help to them. Um, and yeah, if they've seen it, it's obviously a different perspective. If they've never seen it and you're trying to educate, I think that it ends up kind of being almost a superficial conversation. If you have a non-addict talking to a kid about trying to avoid addiction, it's I think that just because that the non-addict doesn't understand the depths and the gravity of those
Mm-hmm.
things. Yeah. Um,
I mean, we go out. I mean, I've gone out and I've spoken at schools,
mhm,
to high school and have told them my story, but in depth, like from start to finish, everything that went along with it, like an entire timeline, you know, the good, the bad, the ugly, and you know, the look on some of their faces. Like I hope it sunk through to most of them, even if it was just one. But a lot of them were like, "Oh my god!" Like,
yeah.
you know,
Well, let's be honest, right? Nobody's growing up saying, "I want to be an addict when I grow up," right?
yeah, no,
And
I didn't
and
do it until I was 36 years old.
yeah, right. And so I think that we disregard how powerful certain things are to certain people and how it can alter their ability to function, right? Because I do see a lot of, whether it be mental health or it's childhood trauma, um, or it's, monstrous anxiety, um, or borderline personality disorder, bipolar, which is what I deal with. Um, and I think we need to keep talking about these things. We need to keep putting these words out there, these labels that we've established that they mean something, right? And we need to break them down and we need to go look. This is how a lot of times addiction rears its ugly head. It's an accident. It's an accidental thing, like a lot of accidental overdoses are, right? I mean, overdoses, suicide by overdose is specific, but otherwise it's usually accidental.
Right.
Um, and
Poisoning.
so, yeah, right. And so you just want to, because as bad as it you may sit there and see, because I went through the whole dare thing growing up, right? Don't do drugs,
Yeah.
and you're like, yeah, no, sure, absolutely, but sometimes it started off as just a, hey, that was fun, and it was a good experience, or it becomes something where I'm in a tremendous amount of pain, and it's now alleviated that pain.
Yeah.
I mean, we're creatures of habit. We're survival mechanisms, right? Built into us, right? We do what we do to survive, and if we're laced with pain all day long and can't function past it, we're going to find a way to get rid of it.
Yeah. I think another thing that's really important too is to kind of have like a brutally honest relationship with with your kids so
Right.
that they're comfortable enough to say, hey, you know, uh, at this party tonight, they had marijuana there and I tried it. Or, so they're comfortable enough to come to you and tell you anything.
Right.
That's very important.
I completely agree with you. I have the same way. I've got a daughter who's almost going to be starting her almost 19 here, and she's away at college, and it's just like, yeah. And fortunately, I think that's just it, right? I commend you because of the wanting to be constant in your kids' lives as best as you can be. Because you know what, because I'm fine with that, and that takes a level of humility, right? Where we've got to be bare bones with our kids. Hey, look, this is kind of me, holy. I still am imperfect, right? I'm not holier than thou just because I'm your parent. I
Right.
still struggle. That's okay. I think it brings us together in our in similarities and in love, and I think that there's fruit in that. Um, yeah, good stuff, Nicole. This has been a great conversation so far. I appreciate it.
The hardest question that I can't answer still to this day for my kids is when they're like, but what happened? Like, why did it happen? I really don't know. And I don't even know how to answer that. I don't. Because they were like, you were
Shenanigans.
normal our entire life. And then all of a sudden, you just switched. I don't have an answer.
I think the answer is purely it's the addiction gene,
Mm-hmm.
right? You activated it.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen this YouTube video, but there's a YouTube video by Dr. Nicole Labor. Check it out. I've said it on a few of my shows. But she is she's in recovery. She's also a recovery specialist. She's a doctor in it, and she breaks down what's going on inside of the brain to basically establish and have addiction do what it does, and how it traps people into this cycle, right? It's so beautiful, and you definitely show it to your kids. So I will make sure that I'll send you a note. I'll probably put it in the notes too regarding this video, because you sit there and you go, because that's the thing is, she says, look, she goes, you could smoke your whole life, smoke cigarettes your whole life, and she goes, if you don't have the cancer gene for lung cancer, she goes, you're never going to get lung cancer. She goes, you may get you may get lung disease, right, or maybe some emphysema, but she goes, but you won't get cancer. She goes, in with the addiction gene, she goes, you can have 6,000 drinks, and it's the 6,001 that clicks, right? And I'm sure, obviously, if we take, harsher, more gnarly drugs with more profound effects, also the prescribed ones, because those can do profound things, we know that you're going to have you could literally just, you activated the switch, right? And it was, you didn't even know it hit you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that people need to be made aware of, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
And then I remember when I first got, well, one of the times that I got sober, um, I sat there and I was like, how did I live life before this? Like, why am I not happy? Like, I'm not waking up sick no more. Like, what did I used to do before? Like, and it's not like I did it for that long. It was like a few years. But I'm like, nothing I do, I'm not happy. So, I didn't realize, I started Googling it and um, it says like your brain don't even start to heal till around the 9 month mark. And so I just hung on to hope, like one of these days I'm going to wake up and be happy again. But it does happen. But,
yeah,
I don't want, people to be like, oh, this sucks. No, it will get better. Just hang
right.
on.
Yeah, no, it does constantly change, and that is a very important point, because you obviously, if you're clinically depressed already without a substance that's going to depress you, right? Then you have obviously a chemistry imbalance. You take something that makes it worse, even when you remove that thing, you're still dealing with an underlying situation.
Mhm.
But if you're only depressed because of it's a chemical induced depression due to drugs, right? Then your brain is still, it still is like, hey, you've taken this out of my system, and I was so used to it, so now I got to create my own again.
Yeah.
And that's going to take me some time. It's going to take me some time to create my own again, to put us kind of back where we were before we ever used anything.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's an important fact. It's, the thing about when we're in addiction, we're typically experiencing emotions, on grander scales, right? In shorter succession, right? We're high, we're not, we're high, we're not, we're high, we're not, we're high, we're not. And so when we start smoothing out that line and it's not so high and low all the time, it feels a little boring, feels
Yeah.
a little mundane, right? Because we were doping ourselves up, to feel something. And that takes some getting used to as well. I agree with you. And so, yeah, we have to be patient. I think that's where, again, community, talking it out, recognizing it is what it is. Yeah, it's that itch, right? Your addiction will go, hey, remember all the good times we had? Now you're just
Hmm.
sitting on the couch watching a show. How boring is that? Remember
Right.
all the good times we had? We can have a
Going to
good
sleep
time
at
right
8:30.
now, right? Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
man.
No, it's like I said, it's a great.
It's short lived. It's short
Oh
lived.
yeah, no, then it becomes
Hmm.
instant regret, right? And all that effort, and that's the thing that's frightening, is just that you got to be careful that all this effort that you built up, if you relapse, I think immediately after that relapse, you have to take a good hard look at how hard you are on yourself, because again, especially the longer amount of time you have, because that can send you down a rabbit hole also. You beat yourself up so bad. Look at all
Yeah.
this effort in. I'm a failure. I'm worthless. I can't believe I do something as simple as this. I had it all together for so long, and now I've dropped the ball. Oh my, and it takes people down a very gnarly guilt and shame path that's very unhealthy.
Yeah.
And you got to sit there and go, no, that was the addiction. It's interesting because both of my alcoholic relapses, I never went to it. I never went to a detox and a recovery place until the first time I ever did it, which was a year and a half ago, which basically got me clean and sober. And it was, fortunately, I felt like I rolled the lucky dice where I had a fabulous place to go to here in the Bay Area called Silicon Valley Recovery. I consider them family now. I've had a couple of them on the show, but they're just great people. Um, and yeah, so I feel fortunate in that regard. But both of the times before that, when I recognized that I had a problem drinking, and I somehow stopped. I was smoking weed at the time, so I was obviously using something else. But both those 6 years, I felt like, oh, you know what? I'm cured of it. I'm cured of, I've got my drinking under control, so I can do it again. And the first time it was like, okay, that's fine. We'll let you think that. And it just was slowly but surely creeping into my life. Slowly but surely. And it just kind of fizzled out within a year. Because it was like at the year, it was basically I was over the top, completely gone all the time, and had family screaming at me. And I put it away. And then I did it again. 6 years later, it was like, no, I got this. And this time it was a faster descent downward. And it was uglier. Um, and that really, really scared me. Because I got to that point where I was like, oh yeah, no, I can see now what this thing's doing to me, and it's not good. It is not good. And then once that happened, it was another crazy 3 or 4 weeks before I finally got in. So
That's good. Yeah. Well, when I left the one rehab, I was at a rehab the drug court had dropped me off at about a month and a half prior to when I found this other program. But they like treated you like you were an inmate because you were, there through drug court and all that. And I was like,
right,
F this. I'm like,
right,
yeah, I'm court mandated to go, but I don't have to go here. Like,
right,
no way are you going to treat me like this.
right.
So I hopped on a train, went back home, and I had like a good 2.5 week run. And then I found this other program. But the day before I got picked up to go to this program, I had like a near fatal overdose.
Oh,
So luckily, the people were around me and knew me, um, took like I think 4 Narcans to revive me, and they cracked my chest because they were trying to give chest compressions. But luckily, I got picked up the next day, and that's when I came to where I am now, um, and stuck it out at the program.
So you had gone into a place, left there, trying to get into another place, and in that process you relapsed hard.
Yeah.
And that's exactly that's one of the things that I've been trying to drive to people that are have loved ones in their life who are maybe suffering, right? It's like as soon as they recognize and as soon as they're attempting to get help, I'm like, you cannot let them out of your sight. You
Mm-hmm.
can't. Because that's what happened to me is like I recognized it. So I went to the ER, right? And they actually didn't even admit me. I was in the ER for a few hours, kind of basically sobering up, but they let me home. And then I got a psychiatrist and a psychologist, needed to want to, get some help and everything. And just thought that, hey, I recognized it, right? That kind of scared me. And no, it was the worst answer because like while I was sitting there waiting in a sense to get help, I was basically crashing and burning. And I mean, I started basically going on benders and so yeah. So when somebody recognizes at that point that they have an issue and they're reaching out for help, you got to basically hold on to them for dear life and don't let them out of your
Yeah.
sight because that's the most volatile moment, I think, where they could seriously injure themselves or kill themselves because it's like a goodbye, right? It's breaking up, right? They're at this point in their relationship, right? This romance that they've had with this substance was, right? This romance, this relationship, we're now breaking it off. We recognize that we're not good for each other anymore. So now we need to break it off. And we're like, but we don't know how to live without each other. So let's
Yeah.
have one final goodbye. And that's what kills people.
And I had about
Right.
5 months clean because I was locked up for 3 of them months, and then I was in the program for about a month and a half, and then I left. And while waiting for this other rehab, you know, I didn't. I was on Subutex or no Suboxone at the time. So of
Mm.
course, when I leave rehab, I don't got no more Suboxone. So I'm gonna use. I'm gonna in my mind, I'm like, I'm just gonna use until I go to rehab. It's not my fault or anything. I have to use, like, but
Yeah.
all the excuses we make up in our head.
Yeah. Yeah. We're afraid of what life looks like without this in our lives. Right. We know it's not good, but we don't know what life looks like without it.
Right.
So we're like, you know what? As sick and twisted as it is, I still feel like I have some semblance of control, even though I don't. But I sure as heck won't. I won't have control of what's going on in here when I'm clean. So how do I deal with that? Yeah. With
Mhm.
um, with the services that were helpful for you, was there actually psychiatric medication and assistance and psychiatrists there in that organization? That's good.
Yep.
That's good.
Hmm.
Because you need both pieces. I think, for the most part, right, most detoxes now are medically assisted, right? And
Yeah.
they need to be, right? And they need to be, if there's medicines that help make it easier for people, give it to them. Nicole, this has been great. I don't think I have anything else for you. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about? Is there something that you wanted to drive home?
Um, I can't think off the top of my head right now, but this was a good conversation.
Thanks for spending your afternoon with me. I like the fact that this is obviously something that's now a part of your life. You basically went in head first, got clean, a part of the community,
Mhm.
have been through some very, very, very harrowing experiences that you can now share with others and let them know that, we've all reached different bottoms that were scary and we didn't think we could ever get out of. And in the darkest, it's always darkest before the dawn, right? Keep having faith, and keep reaching out, right? Because there are people that love you, that support you, that recognize and understand exactly what's going on in your pain and struggle. And if people understood that more, they would come out of the shame, come out of the hiding in the corner and the isolation, and sit there and go, yes, I've been doing this, and I've been doing it for this long, and I need help, and nobody knows it but me, but it's killing me, and it's a gorilla on my back that I want to shake. And to those that, have it actually out in display, right? Those that are unfortunate souls that are slumped over walking down the streets that on Fetty and whatnot, Crystal. And it's, so we pray and we do our due diligence, right, to keep those going. And that's the thing that for me, getting on this side of the equation with addiction and understanding it, I was able to kind of separate it enough from me. It's this thing that I got to deal with. It's not who I am. It's just, I've got this thing. And, and separating it makes it a little less severe in our lives. And it gives me a little bit of control back. I still respect it, right? Just as much as I would have to any other sort of illness or disease, right? I have to respect, what it can do to me. And just keep my distance and control my choices, right? But Nicole, well, Happy New Year to you. You have yourself a great 2025. And I'm thinking that maybe like in 6 months or so, we'll have you back on and you can give us an update and we can kind of take it from there. Okay, sound good?
Sounds good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. You have a good night, okay?
You too.
Bye-bye.